Okay, the next topic is pulmonary ventilation. This means how the air goes in and outside your lungs. And that is because we have muscles. The main muscle for respiration, meaning inspiration and expiration, is going to be the diaphragm. Right? The diaphragm moves up and down, and that allows us to breathe. However, we are not breathing in and out like when we are sitting down, for example, in the class, and that's the only way we do it. No, we also run, we also laugh, we also take a deep breath, right? And because of that, we need to use other muscles as well, not just the diaphragm. That's what you see right here in this figure. That yes, the diaphragm is the main one, but depending on the type of situation that we have, look, the rectus abdominis will work, internal intercostals, external intercostals, the external cleidomastoid, depending again on the type of situation. We're going to use more muscles because we just don't inhale and exhale like when we are sitting down in class. So if we scroll down, we can see in the respiratory muscles, we already talked about it. And right there you have neural control of breathing. Why? Because we know that in order for us to move a muscle, we need a nerve. As you know from Anatomy 1, different areas of the brain are going to be in charge of different things. Right here, you can see that the area of the brain that takes care of the muscles that allow us to breathe are going to be in the brain stem. Right? In the brain stem, you're going to have, therefore, respiratory centers. So which ones are these respiratory centers that eventually are going to provide information to the muscles so they can move? Right here, you can see them. You have ventral respiratory group, dorsal respiratory group, and the pontine group. The ventral respiratory group basically moves the muscles. The only thing it does is just moves the muscles. You can see here, you see ventral, sends the information down to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord it goes into the muscles. Okay, this is like the engine. But like in your car, your engine can be, the speed at which your engine runs can be modified with the gas or the brake. Same thing. This is going to be modified by other centers, such as dorsal respiratory group and the pontine respiratory group. This dorsal respiratory group is modified or is affected by the changes that we find in our blood. Remember that in the blood vessels chapter, there were aortic bodies, carotid bodies at the level of the blood vessels, and they capture the chemical composition of the blood. That chemical composition goes all the way up to your brain into this dorsal respiratory group, and the dorsal respiratory group will adjust the ventral respiratory group in order to make us breathe faster or slower. Same concept. We have central chemoreceptors. Central chemoreceptors, for example, are going to capture the information that we have in the cerebrospinal fluid. If there's changes, for example, in pH in the cerebrospinal fluid, they will modify the dorsal respiratory group. The dorsal respiratory group will modify the ventral respiratory group so we can change the speed at which we are going to breathe. The pontine respiratory group is the one that is controlled by basically the brain. In cases like when we laugh, right, or when we are scared, for example, sometimes we breathe faster. So then there are areas that our brain controls, and in order for us to breathe faster or slower, the brain uses the pontine respiratory group in order to adjust the dorsal respiratory group, and the dorsal respiratory group adjusts the ventral respiratory group, so the ventral respiratory group can change and modify how we breathe. Okay, let's keep scrolling down, and right there you have the same information that I just mentioned. We have 3 respiratory centers in the brain stem: ventral respiratory group, dorsal respiratory group, and pontine respiratory group. I already explained that. Central and peripheral input. Remember I told you that these centers are going to modify the way we breathe according to the changes that are necessary due to changes in pH or carbon dioxide, etc. Because of that, we have central chemoreceptors. Remember I told you these are changes that may happen in the cerebrospinal fluid. Peripheral chemoreceptors, as I was telling you, this is what we have in the blood vessels. Well, there you go. You see, carotid bodies, aortic bodies, right? And that's what we have seen already in the blood vessels chapter. If we keep scrolling down, in addition to those things, not only we have that, but we also have stretch receptors as well as irritant receptors. Sometimes, when some irritants go into your lung, you start coughing, right? Because obviously that needs to be adjusted in order for us to remove these irritants if it's possible. Okay, the next topic is voluntary control. As you can see, you can hold your breath. So then breathing is voluntary. As I was telling you, you can hold your breath, and it's involuntary because, for example, when you sleep, you don't control it. Okay, so the next thing is pressure, resistance, and airflow. This is very important because this is going to explain how the air goes inside our lungs and how the air goes outside our lungs. And that's got to do with these laws that you have in here. You don't need to know this, but those laws are the ones that explain how the air goes inside and outside. So how do we get the air inside our lungs? Inspiration. So if in your lungs and outside your lungs there is pressure, the pressure in both places is going to be the same. Because if the pressure in the air is 10, we said the respiratory system, nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, and lungs. So then there's no way that the pressure outside and the pressure inside the lungs are going to be different. Why? Because they have communication between. The only way that you can have different pressure is if this is like in an airplane, right? The airplane is pressurized. So the pressure inside the airplane is different than the pressure outside. But other than that, the pressure inside and the pressure outside, at least at sea level, is going to be the same. So what happens is when you inhale, okay, during inspiration, for example, your diaphragm goes down. When the diaphragm goes down, the volume in the lungs increase. When the volume in the lungs increase, the pressure of gases decrease. So, for example, if we have outside 10, when the diaphragm goes down, this was 10, but when the diaphragm goes down, this turns to 5. So let's do this over again so you guys can understand. So if the pressure outside is 10, the pressure inside your lung is 10. What happens if your diaphragm goes down? The size of your lungs increase. Since the size of your lungs increase, the pressure is going to be less. Okay? Let's say 5. So then the air outside your lungs is 10. Because of the diaphragm goes down, now the pressure in here is 5. Now the air moves from high pressure 10 to low pressure 5. And that's how the air goes inside your lungs. The opposite happens in expiration. If this is 10 and this is 5, when the diaphragm relaxes, the diaphragm goes up, the thorax recoils back, and then this pressure in your lungs increases. And now you have in here, let's say, more pressure than outside, and that drives the air out from the lungs. Okay, I hope that that's clear. So let's keep scrolling down. Oh, right here is showing you what I told you, that thorax recoils back. See, because in here, that's why they are showing you the bones. Because it's not only the lungs, it's not only the diaphragm, but also the bones. Right? The diaphragm, when it moves up and down, moves the bones, and these bones are going to also produce some force in order to exhale. Okay, if we keep scrolling down, we can see here everything that I said, difference in pressures, and right here you have expiration. I already explained that. Expiration. And one thing that you need to remember about expiration is that, again, the diaphragm relaxes, the thorax recoils back, and you exhale. But a lot of times you need to exhale more. In those cases, you contract other muscles. So remember, as I was showing you before in the muscles, you have the intercostals, the diaphragm, the rectus abdominis, the sternocleidomastoid. So you contract those muscles, and that's going to allow you to exhale more than just the normal expiration that we get with the recoil back of the thorax, as well as the relaxation of your muscles.